everyone to the course on Bioinorganic chemistry. It's a captivating subject due to several reasons, making it an exciting area of study and research. The interdisciplinary approach of the subject allows scientists to tackle complex biological problems using principles and techniques from various scientific domains, leading to a more comprehensive understanding of the life processes. In simple words, we can say bioinorganic chemistry is the meeting point of chemistry and biology. It involves understanding the role of inorganic elements in biological processes. It is an interdisciplinary subject involving inorganic chemistry, physiology, pharmacology, toxicology, microbiology, and biochemistry. We already know that various elements, particularly metals, are indispensable for carrying out various life processes. Metals like sodium and potassium are required for nerve signals and impulse transmission. Calcium and magnesium perform the structural role in bones and teeth. Iron, in the form of heme and bound protein, is needed for dioxygen transport, storage, and in electron transport chain. Metals like zinc, copper, etc. are part of various metalloenzymes that serve as biological catalysts in various life processes. Cobalt is present in vitamin B12, which is an essential component of human body. Here you can see the list of several metallobiomolecules which are containing metals. As the course progresses, we would learn most of them in detail. Dear students, here is the outline of the topics we are going to cover in this course. We will learn in detail the role of metal ions in regulating biological processes and also the toxicological effects of some of the metals in human body and environment. We will also learn the structure, function, etc. of some of the important metallobiomolecules. We will also learn the chemistry of photosynthesis. We would learn the chemistry of oxygen transport in human body and other biological systems, electron transport in biological systems, which includes the role of cytochromes and other charge carriers, the chemistry of nitrogen fixation, and finally, the role of metal ions in medicine. This periodic table depicts the quantity of various elements that are found in human body. The green color represents those elements that are present in abundance in human body. For example, hydrogen, sodium, potassium, calcium, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, etc. The blue color represents the trace elements which include vanadium, manganese, cobalt, iron, etc. And the pink color corresponds to the remaining elements. Consider the content of the elements in the body of an average healthy person weighing about 70 kg. In this table, we can see that the elements oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and phosphorus are required in considerably huge amounts. That is, it is present about 45.5 kg oxygen, 12.6 kg of carbon, 7 kg of hydrogen, etc. is present in human body. But the elements calcium, potassium, sodium, etc. are required in considerable amounts, but not in the scale of kilogram, but it is required in gram scale. The other elements or metals, the iron, zinc, etc. are required about a few grams. The content of the rest of the metals like molybdenum, etc. are not required in considerable amount, but they are required amount of below 1 gram, that is copper is required only about 0.11 gram and manganese is required about 0.02 gram. So, we can say that only 2% of the human body is composed of metals, but much of the life processes depend on them. The elements in human body or in living systems are categorized into 4. They are categorized into essential elements, trace elements, non-essential elements and toxic elements. The essential elements include the bulk elements, that is, which are found in huge amounts. They are oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc., along with metals, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, etc. The trace elements include iron, iodine, copper, zinc, manganese, cobalt and molybdenum. The non-essential elements are aluminum, strontium, barium and tin. And finally, we have the toxic elements. What are the toxic elements? They are cadmium, Pb, that is lead, and mercury. They are heavily and highly toxic elements present in the environment. Now, let us see what are essential elements. Essential elements are absolutely essential or necessary for life processes. Trace elements are also necessary for life processes. Non-essential elements are actually not essential, but other elements can carry out the function of these non-essential elements in their place. But the toxic elements will disturb the natural functions of the biological system. Metals are classified as bulk metals and trace metals. There are about 13 metals which are essential for plants and animals for their life processes. First, we will see what are the bulk metals. 4 of these, that is sodium, potassium, magnesium and calcium, are present in very large quantities and are called bulk metals. They form 1 to 2% of human body weight, and a 75 kilogram weighing person has approximately 170 gram of potassium, 100 gram of sodium, 1100 gram of calcium and 25 gram of magnesium. Now, let us see what are trace elements. The remaining 9 elements which are present in small quantities are the D block elements, which include vanadium, chromium, molybdenum, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper and zinc. They are known as trace elements. The trace metals represent less than 0.01% of human body weight, and even iron, the most widely used, we need only in the order of 4 to 5 grams, and they are significant part of bioinorganic chemistry. Now, we will move on to ultra trace metals. The trace metals are further divided into 2 subgroups, iron, copper and zinc forming one group. The remaining 6 elements, vanadium, chromium, molybdenum, manganese, cobalt and nickel, are termed as ultra trace elements, being present in exceedingly small concentrations. They are needed not more than 1 parts per million in food. Now, let us see metal ions and their occurrence in human body. So, we can see that the calcium ions are present in about 1.5 to 2% of the body mass, and it is present mainly in bones and teeth. Magnesium 2+ ions are found in bones and teeth and is required for intracellular activity. The Fe2+ ion is present in hemoglobin and it is required for oxygen transfer. Copper 2+ is required for our functions as a cofactor in enzymes. Zinc 2+ is a cofactor in enzymes, particularly carbonic anhydrase, and it is required for growth and healing. The element cobalt in +3 oxidation state is present in vitamin B12. Sodium ions are required for water balance, nerve impulses, and fluids, and potassium element +1 oxidation state is also required for the ion transport in human body. This graph represents the effect of concentration of elements in our body. We can see that the deficiency or the excess of elements may create metabolic disorders and may inhibit the growth and development of an organism or may cause several diseases in human body or other organism. So, each element or each metal is required in desirable quantities in the right amount in the living system. An excess or a deficiency can generate problems in the functioning of the life processes. Now, let's discuss the biological role of bulk metals in human body. First, we will see the role of sodium metal. Sodium is required for maintaining the osmotic pressure of blood and blood volume. It is required to maintain proper balance of water and other minerals. It's required for maintenance of neuromuscular excitability and irritability. Now, let's see what happens if sodium is deficient in human body. It causes hyponatremia, which means that the lowering of blood pressure and circulatory failure. Next, we move on to the biological role of potassium in human body. What are the functions of potassium in human body? Along with sodium, potassium helps in balancing the acid-base equilibrium and water balance in tissues and blood. The electrical potential gradient by sodium-potassium pump generates muscle contraction and regulates heartbeat. It is part of the biochemical reactions in energy metabolism and it's required for protein synthesis from amino acid. Its deficiency causes hypokalemia, muscle weakness, abnormal heart rhythms, etc. Now, we will see the role of magnesium in human body. Magnesium is an essential enzyme cofactor which aids the breakdown of glucose and other fat molecules, as well as it is required for the creation of enzymes, proteins, and it is also required for cholesterol regulation. It is present in plants for the synthesis of chlorophyll. The other functions of magnesium include the blood pressure regulation, muscle contraction, nerve function, and it is also required for regular heartbeat. It's present in bonds and it maintains the structure of bonds. It is required for energy production. It's required for DNA and RNA synthesis, glutathione synthesis, and it is also essential for blood sugar control. The deficiency of magnesium will cause convulsion and neuromuscular irritation. It also creates tremors and spasms. Now, let's discuss the role of calcium in human body. We know that calcium aids the blood coagulation in case of injuries. If there is lack of calcium in blood, it takes longer to get coagulated. Calcium has a significant impact on muscle contraction in our body. Our nerves can become faulty if there is deficiency of calcium. The presence of calcium aids the regulation of nitrogen metabolism in plants, the entire growth process in plant, as well as the quantity of chloroplast will be harmed if there is insufficient calcium. Calcium aids the stabilization of cell membrane permeability, and in human body, osteoporosis can be avoided by maintaining healthy calcium levels. The deficiency of calcium causes rickets, hypocalcemia, and osteoporosis. Now, let's move on to the biological role of trace metals in human body. First, we will discuss iron, which is one of the most important trace metal present in human body. Iron is the chief oxygen carrier in blood of mammals, birds, and fishes. It is stored in human body as myoglobin. It is an electron carrier in plants, animals and bacteria in the form of cytochromes. It is present in nitrogenase enzyme and in enzymes like aldehyde, oxidase, catalase, peroxidase and succinic anhydrase. The deficiency of iron causes anemia. Now let's see the biological role of copper metal. Copper is the oxygen transport protein present in aquatic animals. It is stored as ceruloplasmin. It is part of enzymes like superoxide dismutase, dopamine beta hydroxylase, amine oxidase, tyrosinase, uricase, cytochrome oxidase, catalase, etc. It aids bond formation and maintenance of myelin sheath in nerve fibers. It is essential for brain functioning, iron metabolism and skin pigmentation. It also leads to the inability of utilization of iron in liver. The deficiency of copper causes Menkes disease, which is also known as steely hair syndrome. Demineralization of bones and decolorization of skin and bones are also caused by the deficiency of copper. Now let's see what happens if copper is present in excess in the body. Wilson's disease, it's a condition when the copper concentration increases up to 100 times greater than the normal level. Copper is accumulated in a number of tissues like liver, brain and kidneys, which lead to liver and kidney failure and various neurological abnormalities. Too much copper causes necrotic hepatitis and hemolytic anemia. Now let's move on to the biological role of zinc. Zinc is another important element which forms an integral part of human body. It is present in enzymes like carboxypeptidase, carbonic anhydrase, kidney phosphatase, liver alcohol dehydrogenase, etc. It helps in body growth and sexual development. It's part of insulin, and during diabetes, zinc amount is reduced to half in pancreas. Now let's see what happens due to the deficiency of zinc. In infants, it is termed as acrodermatitis enteropathica and is characterized by behavioral disturbances, diarrhea, hair loss and severe peri-orificial skin rashes. The chronic dietary deficiency of zinc combined with other deficiencies include dwarfism, hypogonadism and sexual immaturity. Now let's move on to the biological importance of cobalt in living systems. It is the main component of vitamin B12. It is present as cobalamine. It is synthesized only by bacteria. It enters the human body by taking food and animal sources like meat. It maintains normal function of bone marrow and produces erythrocytes. And the deficiency of cobalt will cause pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune condition that prevents your body from absorbing vitamin B12. Now let's move on to the biological significance of molybdenum. It is part of metalloenzymes like xanthine oxidase and aldehyde oxidase, sulfide oxidase, etc. It is involved in copper metabolism. It is present in enzymes of nitrogen fixation and nitrate reduction in plants. The excess of molybdenum is quite toxic to the human body and it may lead to the deficiency of copper. Now let's see the biological role of these metals, these trace metals, that is vanadium, chromium, nickel and manganese. First, we will see the function of vanadium. It is important for the growth of plants. It is important for oxygen transport in certain lower organisms. The deficiency of vanadium will create increase in blood fat and cholesterol level. Now let's see the biological role of chromium. The main function of chromium is the glucose tolerance. the deficiency of chromium is suspected to cause diabetes. Now let's see the biological significance of nickel. It is present in enzymes like urease, methylogenic bacteria factor F430, etc. The deficiency of nickel causes leaf chlorosis along with nectaриc leaf tips. Now let's see the biological significance of manganese. It is present in metalloenzymes like pyruvate kinase, pyruvate carboxylates, etc. It's an enzyme activator, and it is present in phosphophenol pyruvate, photosynthetic system, etc. The deficiency of manganese causes impaired reproductive function, skeletal abnormalities, and impaired glucose tolerance. Now, let's move on to the toxicological effects of heavy metals. We know that the heavy metals, lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium are highly toxic to the human body. So, what is the problem with the heavy metals? We know that they are non-biodegradable, they induce multiple organ damage, and it is an expected human carcinogen. Now, let's see what are the toxicological effects of the heavy metal lead. Divalent lead readily replaces calcium 2+ in bonds and either becomes firmly fixed or reversibly fixed. Lead poisoning can cause behavioral and educational abnormalities and even mental retardation in young children. Lead interfere heme synthesis by inhibiting the key enzymes involved in the synthesis. Toxicity of organometallic cation, that is triethyl lead, results from the permeability of membranes, including the very discrimination of blood-brain barrier, causing several disorders of central and peripheral nervous system. The lead poisoning can also lead to anemia. Now let's move on to the toxicological effects of mercury. We have heard about the Minamoto disease that occurred in Japan in 1953 to 1960. 45 people died on eating mercury-contaminated fish from Minamoto Bay. The mercury poisoning is heard to occur by consuming wheat dusted from mercury in Iraq in 1972. Now, let us look into the reasons of toxicity of mercury. Mercury is having very strong affinity to the deprotonated forms of thiol ligands such as cysteine. Mercury in 2+ state will bind strongly with the thiol groups of the proteins and enzymes, and this binding will change the conformation of the protein about the active site. Since mercury is a soft acid and sulfur and thiol groups are soft bases, there will be strong interaction between them, between mercury and the sulfur ligands, and this is the level of, this will increase the interaction between the toxic mercury and the protein molecule, thereby very dangerously affecting the life processes. Actually, liquid mercury is appeared to have very little effect, but vapor mercury is readily absorbed into the bloodstream, producing very great damage to brain and central nervous system. The alkyl mercury, that is methyl mercury, etc., are even far more dangerous. The other consequences of mercury poisoning include irritability, shyness, tremors, change in vision and hearing, memory problems, depression, and numbness. Now, let us look into the arsenic poisoning. We know that arsenic is a carcinogen. It is causing great risk of cancer in the lungs, bladder, kidney and liver, etc. Arsenic also binds to the sulfur and inhibit the protein or enzyme action. especially in enzymes like pyruvate dehydrogenase. It also interferes with the phosphorus metabolism. Arsenic interferes with the phosphorus metabolism and thus it will affect the ATP synthesis, which or those reactions in human body or living system that require phosphorus. In most cases, how arsenic is affecting is that it will replace phosphorus in most of the life reactions and thus it will cause great harm in the life processes. Now, let's move on to the toxicological effects of heavy metal cadmium. Cadmium is found to accumulate in the liver and kidney and produces irreversible kidney damage. It can cause respiratory and pulmonary damage. Even when the excessive amounts of cadmium is being ingested, it replaces the zinc enzymatic sites, bringing about metabolic disorders. The sources include metallurgical plants,
cadmium plating and battery fabricators.
Acute cadmium poisoning leads to nausea, salivation, vomiting, diarrhea and abdominal pain. It also causes brittleness of bones. We can see that poisoning of cadmium leads to a disease called Ithai disease, which is known in 1960s. It was found in the mining sites of Japan and it was caused by the deposits of cadmium in rice and cereals. Now, let's see what is the reason for toxicity of cadmium. Cadmium is very similar to zinc. Therefore, cadmium 2+ can displace zinc 2+ in many zinc-containing enzymes. Like mercury 2, cadmium 2 also binds strongly with the thiol groups of the cysteine residues of enzymes. For example, carbonic anhydrase, dipeptidase, carboxypeptidase, etc. Cadmium 2+, like other toxic metal ions, affects the active conformation of biomolecules due to strong binding. Now, let's move on to the summary of today's lecture. Of the 109 non-elements, about 30 elements are believed to be essential for the survival of living organisms. Metal ions are used in biology as triggers for specific cellular functions. The essential trace elements which function in metalloenzymes include iron, zinc, copper, manganese, cobalt, nickel and selenium. The toxicity of metals may result from the blocking the essential biological functional groups of biomolecules or by displacing the essential metal ions from these biomolecules or by modifying the active conformation of biomolecules. Hope the lecture was informative and beneficial for all of you. Thank you.